I don't want them to grow there and then to go through a lot of difficulty that I went through it. So
the community, the tech community, is saying it was a meritocracy. It didn't matter where you come from, what you look like, and it was a lie.
When he was finished with the first prescription, he was already addicted.
It is a day's work for $3 to $4 pay, and another example of Lebanon's child labour problem. But for this family of Syrian refugees struggling to survive, it's also a lifeline.
إنه ليش ماما تشتغل لحالها ازعل أو بدي أساعد أمي لأنه كمان.
Thousands of Lebanese and Syrian children are working in the agricultural sector and on the streets, and many fear the problem is getting worse. Syrian refugees have been hit by reduced humanitarian support, costly residency fees, and government restrictions on their access to the job market.
Child labour affects all those facets in growth and development of children and has very serious detrimental effects on their quality of life, health and well-being, both in the short term and in the long term.
مشغولك اليوم؟
بتعرفي كل بنت وكل ولد بيكون عنده حلم وطموح، يعني ما كنت بتخيل إنه
Thanks to a local NGO, Beyond Association, there is good news for Yasmin and her 3 sisters. They are among 450 children in this region given back the chance to play, rediscover their childhood and learn in the mornings before their work, with the eventual aim of moving them back into mainstream education.
We're trying to work with those children step by step to let them going out from work, and when they come here, their dream is to have education. Now their dream to be a lawyer, to be a doctor. So you see, we can see from here our impact.
بيعطينا أمل للمستقبل. نروح ونغني ننشهر. مثل الشخص بقول مثل هيك هالمطرب بصير يسمعنا ويحط على السيارات.
These are among the 300 underprivileged youngsters in Lebanon being taught how to sing by internationally renowned conductor Salim Sahab. In a matter of months, the hope is to transform children left on the fringes of society into confident singers ready to perform on the big stage, complete with an orchestra and an audience of hundreds. A big name in Middle Eastern music and opera, Sahab wanted to inspire.
I was determined to learn them how to dream about the future. They hadn't any idea about the future, about what they can be in the future.
يعني خلتني إنه شوف مثلاً إنه في عالم ما شوفها خلتني شوفها إنه مثلاً يعني كيف يعني مثلا أنا يعني يمكن ولا مرة يعني غنيت قدام حدا أو شيء يعني خلتني غني قدام حدا وهيك يعني.
Those here share 2 things in common: a difficult upbringing and a passion for singing that helps overcome differences. John Owens for VOA News, Tripoli.
familiar English. 6 weeks new to the United States, Hassan Abdurrahim can just follow along. He's learning the hymns his new neighbors already know. And with his family at his side, sharing their hymns.
Hey, Michael.
Beautiful. Morning. Your daughter has a really pretty voice.
How are you?
Savoring a moment of peace he didn't think was possible.
The first day when they took us to the prison, they beat us.
Pastors like Hassan aren't outlawed in his native Sudan, but Christians are an endangered minority. For Hassan, that meant living with the possibility of prison every day. Of all the hardships, interrogations and tiny prison cells, he says the worst was not knowing.
It really was a very hard time for me thinking of my family because I don't know anything about them.
But even a 12-year prison sentence for espionage couldn't shake his faith.
No one told me that, but I have the peace. There's something going outside, but I don't know.
Far from Sudan, a Facebook post telling Hassan's story was reaching the right person.
I didn't know any better, so I got in my car with my letter that I'd written and drove to the Sudanese embassy.
It was the first time a member of Congress had spoken to the Sudanese government in 10 years. After months of work and a trip to Sudan, Garrett worked with NGOs to secure Hassan's release.
I commend the Sudanese government to the extent that they were willing to acknowledge that mistakes have been made in the past and that there's a need to reassess how religious minorities are treated. That's progress.
Hassan and his family visited Washington to see the man responsible for their new life.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's great to see you.
It meant a lot to them and to the congressman. An effort he says doesn't conflict with his support for President Trump's restrictions on travel from 6 Muslim-majority countries, including Sudan. Garrett notes the Abdurrahims were fully vetted and earned their refugee status. For this freshman congressman, rules are key, but moments mean more.
You can love a bill, you can advocate on behalf of a bill, you can believe in a bill, but you can't say a prayer with the bill, have dinner with the bill, shake hands with the bill. And it was sort of surreal.
As strange as leaving the streets of Khartoum for Garrett's Virginia district, where 5 churches work together to set up Hassan and his family with a home on the farm of their new pastor. Surrounded by fields where the family will soon see snow for the first time. So many changes, but all grounded by a father's certainty.
Even though it is hard for us to leave a country, but I think it is also better. I don't want them to grow there and then to go through a lot of difficulty that I went through it. So here I know here they can have chance.
A chance made possible by churches and a congressman. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Cumberland, Virginia.
We focus on creating an inclusive and an innovative tech ecosystem for everyone.
It's a war zone out there.
The film drama Detroit by Academy Award-winning filmmaker Catherine Bigelow is based on the 1967 riots that tore apart the city of Detroit.
These riots, this was an anger that was building and was on a collision course in 1967.
Major American cities such as Detroit became the battleground for discontented African Americans facing unemployment and racial discrimination. Bigelow focuses on a chain of events one night during the riots that led police to brutalize a group of innocent African Americans.
went in there, 3 kids have been killed.
No. So they were killed right before you got there.
Sir.
You carry a .38, right?
Police officers attempt to incriminate an African-American security guard who witnessed the events at the hotel and tried to intervene to defuse the situation. John Boyega plays real-life security guard Melvin Dismukes.
I need you to survive the night. He was an unspoken guardian angel to those boys that were there.
Police! Detroit combines a cinema verite approach with taut drama. Weaving historic footage into dramatic sequences, the film immerses us into the riots as a pivotal moment of systemic racial injustice and repression in America.
My hope is that the film could maybe stimulate greater conversation.
From the inner city, we move to the white American suburbs of the 1950s with George Clooney's dark satire, Suburbicon.
Nothing like this ever happened here. This is a safe place. It was.
Like Bigelow, Clooney uses real-life racial tensions as a counterpoint to his murder mystery, which takes place in the all-white suburb of Levittown, Pennsylvania.
I could kill you, too.
A corrupt middle executive, played by Matt Damon, is getting away with a murder while the community focuses its attention and indignation against the Myers, the first African-American family to move into Levittown. George Clooney says when they were making the film, President Donald Trump had not yet been elected, and the racial intolerance that surfaced in Charlottesville had not taken place.
It was in the middle of the campaign, and it seemed like it was fun to talk about and remind people that these are not new subjects.
Mr. Ramirez was told he was not under arrest, and yet he was refused use of the bathroom. That's a violation of civil rights.
You can wait and address.
In Roman J. Israel Esquire, filmmaker Dan Gilroy crafts a character drama that targets institutionalized racism through a corrupt judicial system. The story takes place in today's Los Angeles and revolves around Roman, a socially awkward lawyer.
Finding in contempt.
Played by Denzel Washington, Roman comes face to face with an overburdened justice system which disproportionately affects African Americans.
Everybody looking at you crazy.
Filmmaker Dan Gilroy says his story, like his character, is reminiscent of the political activism of the 1960s and 70s.
The story spoke to me on a very contemporary level. There are things going on right now, legally, constitutionally, nationally and internationally, that the story just became a focus.
Despite their different methodologies, all three films address racial tensions, but also the potential for racial reconciliation and tolerance. Penelope Pulu, VOA News, Washington.
I think that the news is pushing it, making it look so much worse than it is. Here where we live, it's not like that. I mean, I'm not saying there's no racism on both sides, but we all get along fine. I don't understand. They make it look horrible, and it's not that way. It's not.
A lot of people say race, race, there's not a lot of races now, but it is, But people try to keep it, under the table, but as a black man, I can look and see every day.
For me, success is making an impact. I just want to help people. I took a different path coming to Silicon Valley. I came here not with a startup, I came here with a solution, an opportunity to make impact, to create wealth, relationships, and education for people who look like me. At the time, in 2011, the community, the tech community, saying it was a meritocracy. It didn't matter where you come from, what you look like. It's an equal level playing field for everyone. And it was a lie. It was a flat out lie. So when I came, it was a huge culture shock. I would go days, maybe see one or two other black people that work in tech. It was an emotional drain. It became depressing. It was a wake-up call. And I had to really dig deep and start working on self-care, my confidence, to know and believe that I deserve to be here just like everyone else with an idea or a dream or with a passion to create the next great startup or a program that can educate and impact underrepresented entrepreneurs. Today, I'm the co-founder and CTO of Change Catalyst. We focus on creating an inclusive and an innovative tech ecosystem for everyone. We host the Tech Inclusion Conference, Career Fair, and Startup Showcase across the world. And so we created a conference so the conference can not just educate people around inclusion, around innovation, building products with diverse teams, but also let people feel it, let people experience inclusion. There's several tech companies in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. You can walk in, you're lucky if you see one black person, one Latino person, who is not a security person. There are literally people who work in tech who we have glorified in some of these positions, CEOs, executives, we read about in Forbes, Bloomberg, but yet they don't know how to have a real conversation with someone who looks different than them. Just because I'm black, or I could be LGBTQIA, I could be Muslim, I could be Indian. There's this notion that I can't be just as good as you. I'm not qualified to sit at the table, or I can't lead this company. That's not true. That's just not true. Not in 2017, not in America, not in this world. We want to show the world that when you have an inclusive tech industry, an inclusive tech culture, we have an inclusive hiring practice. Not only will you have a great company, not only will your profits soar, but it's the right thing to do.
The doctors spent very little time with us as patients. We never talked about recovery, we never talked about therapy. It was, here's the medication we're gonna give you. There was no warnings. They never told me that this was gonna be leading to something greater than this, or that I'm gonna keep wanting more.
Hi, I'm Delegate John Bell.
Nice to meet you.
Virginia Delegate John Bell works hard for the people in his district on issues like women's rights and affordable health care. But his focus lately has been the opioid addiction crisis, ever since he discovered that his own son, Josh, had become an addict.
He was in a car accident 7 years ago, and in the car accident he injured his neck.
They never took an x-ray, nothing. The doctor looked at my neck for a second, and then he gave me some Vicodin.
And when he came out of the emergency room, he came out with an opioid prescription for 90 days with 5 refills.
I remember when I got home that night and I took it, it's like the first time experiencing love.
When he was finished with the first prescription, he was already addicted.
Josh's opioid addiction quickly turned from pills to heroin.
The high was so powerful, I felt like what I felt like early in my addiction. It just got terrible from there.
With his addiction out of control, Josh sought help at pain management clinics, but it didn't help.
The doctors spent very little time with us as patients. We never talked about recovery, we never talked about therapy. It was, here's the medication we're gonna give you. There was no warnings. They never told me that this was gonna be leading to something greater than this, or that I'm gonna keep wanting more.
Since Josh lives in Texas, his family was unaware of what he was going through.
You know, looking back, we didn't really understand the addiction, and we didn't know what signs to look for to know he was addicted during this period.
As soon as my dad found out, he flew literally down to Texas that day. My path to recovery started that day.
When I visited him and he explained to me what had been going on, the first thing I told him is, that I loved him and I supported him.
That family support is crucial to recovery.
Drug addiction, or any addiction, is commonly called a family disease. I think that's an accurate description, because it's not just the person who's addicted who suffers, it's the whole family. This is my son Joshua.
Bell says dealing with it openly is key.
Often people view addiction as something that is negative. It's people camped out under a bridge. But the truth of the matter is, opioid addiction today is every ethnic group, every income bracket, small towns, big towns, every part of America. This is a personal issue for me.
As a state lawmaker, Bell has been using his experience and position to bring about change.
So we put in a limit on how much can be prescribed for acute pain of an opioid prescription at the emergency room.
They also put money into naloxone, also known as Narcan, which, if administered quickly, reverses the effect of an opioid overdose.
$2.4 million was put towards that, so we make sure all of our first responders have the ability to provide that life-saving drug. Our sheriffs, they tell me about half of the calls they're making right now are addiction-related.
Bell recently won re-election in his district, where he plans to continue working on the opioid crisis.
I'm no one special. I'm just someone who has a son who suffers from addiction. And there's so many people like me. And the more we can share this story, the more we can take this out of the shadows and get it out into a place where we can do some good with it and help those who are struggling.
Josh has been sober for 9 months and is eager to use his experience to help others.
All we want to do is, once we find recovery, is help someone else find recovery, because we know how dark it was and how good it feels not to live a lie anymore.
Julie Tabo, VOA News, Chantilly, Virginia.
I'm a very religious person. Before I ever went back to Vietnam, I prayed that God would send me an angel. And God certainly did send me an angel, straight from heaven.
It's been completely amazing. It's the best thing that I think that could happen to my uncle and to my family.